The Battle of Richmond, Kentucky, was fought on August 29th and 30th, 1862. It was part of the Confederacy's most determined effort to capture the Commonwealth of Kentucky, its men, its resources, and its land, while also driving Union forces out of Tennessee and other key states. The plan was bold. Confederate General Edmund Kirby Smith would lead about 19,000 men north through what we know today as the I-75 corridor. At the same time, General Braxton Bragg, with 35,000 soldiers, would march through the I-65 corridor. Though independent of one another, the two forces hoped to unite in Kentucky. Kirby Smith bypassed the poorly supplied Union garrison at Cumberland Gap and entered the Bluegrass State in mid-August. On August 23rd, Confederate cavalry defeated Union troops at the Battle of Big Hill, but they withdrew when Federal reinforcements under Major General William Bull Nelson arrived in Richmond. Nelson's army was largely inexperienced. Commanded by Brigadier Generals Malong Manson and Charles Cruft, and numbered 6,000 to 7,000 men, about equal to the Confederates then in the area. On August 29th, Kirby Smith's cavalry encountered Manson's troops near Bobtown. When Union cavalry pushed forward, they stumbled upon Confederate infantry commanded by Brigadier General Patrick Claiborne. At dawn on August 30th, Manson marched his men south from Rogersville, while Kirby Smith and Claiborne advanced north toward Kingston. Around 7 a.m., Manson ordered his artillery to fire. The Battle of Richmond had begun. Claiborne struck the Union left, while another Confederate commander, Brigadier General Thomas Churchill, moved his men through a hidden ravine, later known as Churchill's Draw, to outflank the Union right. The trap was set. Even with Cruft's reinforcements, the Federals crumbled and fell back to Rogersville. By noon, the Union tried to form a second line just north of the Rogers House, but once again the Confederates pressed hard, and the Bluecoats fell back toward Richmond. In the late afternoon, General Nelson himself arrived and rallied a third defensive line in the town cemetery. His men fired a fierce volley as the Confederates advanced, but it was not enough. The Southern forces broke the Union right and center, and the Federal line collapsed. Nelson was wounded, but managed to escape. Earlier that day, Kirby Smith had sent most of his cavalry to block the roads west and north of Richmond. Now, with the Union army in full retreat, those Confederate horsemen captured thousands of exhausted Union soldiers as they fled. The Battle of Richmond was over. Over the following days, most of the captured Union men were paroled, released under conditions, while both armies moved on. Several Confederate units from Richmond would go on to fight at Perryville in October. After that battle, the Confederates withdrew to Tennessee, and with them went their hopes of claiming Kentucky. Union forces, Commander Madge, Gen. William Bull Nelson. Strength, approximately 6,500 to 7,000 mostly inexperienced recruits. Casualties, approximately 200 killed, 844 wounded, approximately 4,300 captured. Confederate forces, Commander Madge, Gen. Edmund Kirby Smith. Strength, approximately 19,000 in the campaign, approximately 6,500 engaged at Richmond. Key leaders, Patrick Claiborne, Thomas Churchill. Casualties, approximately 98 killed, 492 wounded, 8 missing. What happened? Confederates flanked both sides of the Union line. Churchill's Draw hidden ravine allowed Confederates to surprise and outflank Union troops. Union lines collapsed 3 separate times in one day, one of the most lopsided Confederate victories of the entire Civil War. Aftermath: nearly 90% of Union troops lost. Opened the door for the Confederates to briefly occupy central Kentucky. Confederates captured Frankfort, Kentucky, the only Union state capital seized during the war. Momentum ended at the Battle of Perryville, October 1862, forcing Confederate retreat back to Tennessee. Homes and buildings used in the Battle of Richmond. 1. The Rogers House Visitor Center today, located near Rogersville. This brick farmhouse sat right in the middle of the battle. Union troops formed a defensive line just north of the house around noon on August 30th. After the fighting, it was used to treat the wounded. Today, it serves as the Battle of Richmond Visitor Center and Museum. 2. Mount Zion Christian Church. a small country church near the battlefield. Used as a field hospital during and after the battle, still standing today with marks from the fighting and preserved as part of the battlefield site. 3. Rogersville homes and farms. Several local farmhouses around Rogersville were commandeered by both armies. Civilians were often forced to leave their homes so that wounded could be treated inside. Many Madison County families lived with scars of the battle for years after, with farms damaged and fences burned for firewood. 4. Richmond Cemetery area. While not a private home, the cemetery just outside town became the site of Nelson's last stand. Homes in Richmond nearby saw Union stragglers flooding into town as the line collapsed. Many of these structures, especially the Rogers House and empty Zion Church, are preserved and can be visited today as part of the Richmond Battlefield Park. They stand as reminders that the Civil War was fought not only between armies, but also in and around the homes of Kentucky. Artillery cannons. Confederate and Union forces both had field batteries. At Richmond, they fired mainly smoothbore and rifled cannon. 12-pounder Napoleon M1857 smoothbore bronze cannon, the workhorse of the Civil War. Fired round, shot, shell, case shot, and canister. 3-inch ordnance rifle. Iron rifled cannon, highly accurate at long range, fired 9 to 10-pound shells. 10-pounder Parrott rifle, rifled cannon with a distinctive reinforced breech, known for range and accuracy, but could burst under heavy use. Infantry rifles and muskets. Most infantry at Richmond carried rifle muskets, but there was a mix because Kentucky was on a supply edge. Springfield Model 1861, Union Standard Caliber .58. Muzzle-loading rifle musket, effective to 500 yards. Enfield Pattern, 1853, imported, used by both sides. Caliber .577, British-made, second only to the Springfield in numbers. Lorenz rifle, Austrian import, both sides. Caliber .54 or .55 varied. Less reliable, but widely issued. Older smoothbores, Union recruits, Kentucky militia. Some troops still carried .69 caliber smoothbore muskets, like the Model 1842, that were less accurate but devastating with buck and ball at close range. Pistols, sidearms, mostly carried by officers, cavalry, and artillerymen. Colt Army Model 1860 caliber, .44, 6-shot, Capan ball revolver. Colt Navy Model 1851, caliber .36, favored for accuracy. Remington New Model Army 1861-63, caliber .44, rugged and reliable. Confederate cavalry also carried captured or privately purchased revolvers, sometimes older dragoon models .44. Bonus: other weapons. Bayonets were standard issue for rifle muskets, making them useful in close combat. Cavalry sabers were carried by mounted units, though pistols and carbines did most of the work. Types of swords used at Richmond: cavalry sabers, Model 1860 light cavalry saber, the most common Union cavalry sword, 34-inch, slightly curved blade, lighter and easier to handle than earlier models. Model 1840 heavy cavalry saber, old wrist breaker, heavier, more curved blade, 36 inches, nicknamed wrist breaker because of its weight and difficulty in long fights. Still widely used by both Union and Confederate cavalry. Officers' swords, Model 1850 Army Staff and Field Officer's Sword, elegant with a straight or slightly curved blade, mostly a symbol of rank, not very effective in battle. Model 1850 Foot Officer's Sword, carried by company and regimental officers, lighter and designed more for appearance and authority than combat. Artillery and infantry short swords. Model 1832 Foot Artillery Sword, short, heavy, Roman gladius-style blade, used by artillerymen but more for chopping brush or defense than battlefield charges, non-regulation swords and imported blades. Confederates especially carried all sorts, captured Union blades, imported French sabers, or even family heirlooms pressed into service. At Richmond, you'd mostly see curved cavalry sabers, the 1860 light and the 1840 heavy, while officers sported straight-bladed dress swords that were as much for show as for use. The heavy sabers could cleave, but in truth, pistols and carbines did more fighting than swords by 1862. The Battle of Richmond Association maintains the site battleofrichmond.com. It is the official online home for history, preservation, and events tied to the Battle of Richmond, Kentucky, 1862. The site includes historic sites, detailed write-ups on homes, churches, and landmarks used in the Battle Rogers House, Pleasant View, Palmer House, Mount Zion Church, and more. Visitor information, maps, museum details, reenactment schedules and directions, preservation updates, news on battlefield restoration and land acquisitions, educational resources, articles, event recaps, and links for teachers, students, and history buffs. If you like what you're watching, please hit that like button and subscribe to Grigsby Digital Home Studios for more history, stories, and creative projects. Here are some facts about uniforms. Union uniforms: Federal Army, standard garb, dark navy, blue woolsack coat or frock coat, sky blue trousers, black forage cap kepi or slouch hat. Headgear: the kepi was most common, though some Kentucky regiments still wore brimmed hats. Accoutrements: black leather belts, cartridge boxes, bayonet scabbards, and canteens. Shoes: rough Jefferson bootees, ankle-high leather shoes. Reality at Richmond: many were new recruits. Uniforms were ill-fitting, stiff, or incomplete. Some soldiers likely still had civilian clothing pieces mixed in. Confederate uniforms: Kirby Smith's Army, standard garb, gray or butternut brown, tan jackets and trousers, often homespun wool dyed with natural colors. Variation: Confederate supply was weak, so units wore a mix of captured Union gear, civilian clothes, and state-issued jackets, especially from Tennessee and Arkansas. Headgear: wide-brimmed slouch hats were more common than kepis. Shoes and equipment: often mismatched, some barefoot, or wearing boots from local farms. Look at Richmond. Many Confederates looked rough, ragged, and weather-beaten compared to Union's newer recruits. This earned them the nickname Butternut Soldiers. Officers and distinction: Union officers wore frock coats with shoulder straps showing rank. Swords were carried mostly as a symbol. Confederate officers: gray frock coats with color insignia stars, bars, but often less standardized. Many had their own tailored coats or civilian wear mixed in. Summary: Union, dark blue, standardized, new but inexperienced. Confederates: gray and butternut, ragged but battle-hardened. On the battlefield, smoke, dust, and mismatched gear made it hard to tell sides apart at times, especially when Confederates wore captured Union coats. At Richmond in 1862, every musket and cannon was black powder, and that meant thick, white-gray smoke rolling across the fields. After just a few volleys, visibility dropped so badly that soldiers could barely see the enemy lines. The air was choking, eyes burned, and throats stung from the sulfur smell. Many veterans later said the smoke was as terrifying as the bullets, turning open farmland into a ghostly haze where friend and foe could vanish in seconds. Women in the field with soldiers, nurses in camps and battlefields. Women followed regiments as volunteer nurses, helping in tents and makeshift hospitals right behind the lines. At Richmond, they likely worked in farmhouses and churches converted into field hospitals, Vivender's camp followers. Some women acted as helpers, cooking meals, mending clothes, and boosting morale. They marched with the men, often enduring the same hardships of hunger, heat, and cold, disguised as soldiers. Dozens, maybe hundreds of women cut their hair, dressed as men, and fought side by side with soldiers. They wanted to serve, follow loved ones, or claim a sense of freedom. Most went unnoticed until wounded or captured. Emotional support, letters and visits from women kept morale alive. When women were in camp, they reminded soldiers of family and home, which was powerful during long campaigns. Women were not just bystanders. They marched dusty roads, endured camp life, and sometimes even stood in the firing line. At Richmond and across the war, they carried courage into the very heart of the battlefield. Children and the Battle of Richmond. Caught in the crossfire, local Madison County children lived on the farms where the battle raged. Many were hidden in cellars or lofts while fighting thundered outside. Some saw their homes turned into hospitals, filled with wounded and dying soldiers. Helpers in hospitals. Older children sometimes fetched water, gathered firewood, or carried messages while women cared for the injured. They learned about war far younger than they should have. Drummer boys and young soldiers across the Civil War. Boys as young as 12 to 15 served as drummers, fifers, or even took up rifles. While not specifically recorded at Richmond, Kentucky units certainly had underage recruits who faced the same horrors as grown men. Trauma of war at home. For farm children, the memory of wounded men bleeding on their floors or fields was something they carried for life. Their families' livelihoods were disrupted, livestock taken, fences burned, and the sound of cannon fire etched into memory. At Richmond, children weren't bystanders to history, they were in it. Some hid in fear, some helped in small but brave ways, and some were young soldiers themselves. The battle scarred not just land and armies, but the childhood of an entire generation. Now let's listen in as the soldiers move into position.
Are they real bayonets? Yes. Oh, those are real. They're real. Are they going to strike or are they going to... Yeah. You think they're going to throw them at people?
Battalion! Prepare to charge! Okay, you youngins, do you understand what the bayonet charge was about? You want to know? All right. Notice it's a triangle. Triangular wounds will never fail. It'll always be somewhere. See you, Blake. Good seeing you, buddy. You come in like this. I jab you, twist it, pull it back out. I got all your innards on my bayonet. Battalion! Shoulder! Fire! First Geneva Convention, it was that one. Company commander! I can't even find a good Pakistani manufacturer. 4 years. This was a very early battle in the war. Kentucky was a federal state. It was the only federal state occupied. The Confederates occupied it for a couple of days. After this battle. Without doubling. Yes. No, I actually fought in the war in Mexico too. Have you ever seen them show troop logo? Butch! Wait. You ready? I'm ready. Give us 5 steps. Alright. Open it! Forward! Gotta go, sorry.
Good job, guys.
Who are we? Kentucky! Kentucky!
We did good today.